Welcome to the Pocket. My name is Scooter, and here for you guys today, I have my Week 13 Power Rankings. We got another one for you guys. Now, I did miss last week, so this is going to be updated based off the last 2 weeks of games that have happened. But don't you worry, there's not too many huge changes, but there's a couple big ones. All right, so we're going to get right into this, and we're going to start at the bottom. And oh God. Oh my God. I could not have imagined. I said it last Power Rankings video. I could not have imagined that the Giants would be number 32 in my Power Rankings. I mean, I'm not saying I'm a delusional fan or anything like that, but I definitely am one of the more optimistic, positive guys. And even when the Giants weren't doing too well, I still had hope that, maybe we can be like a scrappy team. Maybe we can be in that tier. No, it's all over. We have released Daniel Jones. We have chosen to start Tommy DeVito over Drew Lock. All the players that we let go in free agency or traded. Leonard Williams, Xavier McKinney. And don't get me started. Don't get me started on this guy right here. This is a signed jersey. I got this signed in person. It's got to come down for the rest of the year. I mean, I'll pick maybe the Burns jersey. I'll put something else up there. I'm trying to put signed stuff up there, but man, I just can't take it anymore. I mean, can this season just end already? The Giants have officially given up. You look at the team, you look at the players, the coaches look upset. I mean, it just doesn't look like anyone's trying anymore. And what do you expect after you cut and release your starting quarterback? I mean, fans were begging to lose this game in Carolina. So I don't understand what all the uproar is about outside of exactly how bad the Giants have been losing. But like I said, we should have expected this sort of outcome if you're going to cut your starting quarterback. Me personally, I'm not like absolutely like destroyed and like I think, oh man, we got no hope or anything for like the seasons to come and whatnot. But yeah, it's really disappointing to see that we are the worst team in the league at this point in the season, and we're basically just a laughing stock of the entire league. It's just an absolute joke. All right. I got to stop. We got 32 teams to cover. I can't spend that much time on the bottom teams, but I had to do it being a Giants fan. Moving on to number 31, the team that jumped the Giants, who I initially had ranked 2 weeks ago as the worst team in the league, the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, Gardner Minshew is out. He's out for the year, right? Because he broke his collarbone. He landed on a hard. And, he wasn't that much better than Aiden O'Connell, but he certainly raised the floor. So being without him for the rest of the year almost means that they will certainly have bottom three quarterback play for the rest of the season. And even though lots of other teams are suffering from injuries and whatnot, they can survive because they have other things to hang their hats on. Besides Crosby, who's battling through all sorts of injuries, and Brock Bowers, maybe the best rookie tight end we've ever seen. This team really doesn't have much, right, to hang their hat on. So they're in a similar situation as the Giants in this top three pick tier, and they're going to be looking for a new quarterback next season. But a team that is in this tier but won't be looking for a new quarterback next season, most likely, is our number 30 team, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Is T-Law back yet? I don't know. I mean, this team without T-Law was just an absolute embarrassment. I mean, they had a bye, but we did see them play the Lions and just get absolutely destroyed. I mean, they had absolutely no chance. Of course, there's not too much to say when there's only one game, but you play the Lions, you have a bye week. Normally, when you have a bye week, things look a little better after that. But apparently, after teams play the Lions, they're just terrible for the next week or the next 2 weeks or so. So maybe it cancels out. They'll probably pick up where they left off next week versus the Texans. But, obviously the Jaguar season is effectively over. They have 9 losses. There's no way they're making the playoffs. There's no way they're having some, they could have some late season resurgence and do their best to stay competitive or win some games. But it's looking over for them. And then moving up and moving on to our next tier, has a pulse, right? So this isn't top three pick team, but this is teams that, with the exception of the team I'm about to mention, all still mathematically could make the playoffs, I believe, if I'm not incorrect in saying that. But also, they have some kind of pulse, right? They've got something to hang their hat on. But our last team in that tier is going to be our number 29 team, the New England Patriots, who have dropped 3 positions since my last list. I just think at this point in the season, they've just run out of gas. I mean, we know the Dolphins are a better team. They played the Dolphins earlier this year when they didn't have Tua. And I believe the Dolphins were able to win that game. So I guess we could have expected this, Dolphins having Tua back, that they should more handily beat the Patriots. But, it just didn't look that competitive out there. I mean, the Patriots, they've played tough on defense. They really have. They've impressed me this year. They won 3 games. I was really having a hard time seeing them win any games this season with the roster they were rolling out there. But, the culture has fared well for them. They were able to win 3 games so far this year, but, they're 3-9 at this point. Like I said, it looks like they're running out of gas. I think they've done well in this first year of the rebuild, but it's time to start looking at next season. I don't see much good coming out of the rest of their schedule or their season. Moving on to our next team, our number 28 team, who has climbed 2 spots since my last list, the Dallas Cowboys. Micah is back, so the defense definitely looked better this week. But aren't they such a confusing team? I mean, early on in the year, I understand Micah got hurt in the Giants game, and that had an impact in the games moving forward where Dak was healthy, but you would expect the offense, and I suppose there was lots of special teams points, a kickoff return for a touchdown. I believe they returned like a second one at the end of the game as Washington was trying onside kicks and whatnot. But just like, how do they win this game? How do they come out and beat the Commanders after, you can't really tell me it's just all from adding Micah. They did fall in draft position because they won that game. So I guess I can laugh a little bit at that, but they're not looking for a quarterback, right? They're just going to be taking probably Ashton Genty or just best player available. So they're still going to get a nice solid player and be looking forward into next year. But yeah, they've got some sort of a pulse because they only have 7 losses. But in the end of the day, their season's over. But good for them getting a win against a division opponent. Moving on to our next team, who has fallen 2 spots, but that might not be correct, right? It might not make a whole lot of sense to you. The Titans, number 27. As I said, they fell 2 spots. I had them at 25 in my last list. What a great win for them, beating the Houston Texans, a division opponent. Their offense was unexpectedly really, really good in this game. They ran the ball well. Will Levis was hitting a lot of deep balls with success, and it's nice to see him mixing in some actual good explosive plays with some of the bad plays he's had this year. Man, this guy is just hilarious. He threw a pick 6, and you could see him sprinting after as soon as the ball got caught, head down. He was trying to get there. He was showing coach, I messed up. I know I did, but I'm going to put in maximum effort to try to make up for that. I mean, I love him. He's a great, fun type of football player that is just so, like I said, so much fun to watch. But let's get back to the team. I think with the way that their defense has played all season, that if they're going to have offensive performances like this, they're going to be playing spoiler and upsetting some playoff contenders nearing the end of their schedule. So very encouraged by what I'm seeing, but I would say most of the reason I'm dropping them 2 spots is maybe I was just a little too high on them 2 weeks ago. So it's unfortunate for them, but yeah, so they're going to be the number 27 team. Moving on to my next team, who have risen 2 spots to number 26, the Cleveland Browns. What a fun win on Thursday night against the great Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I understand the snowy conditions and whatnot, and you can argue that assisted the Browns in this win, but I would say the Steelers' offense, defense, and special teams is better than the Browns. Their entire team is better than the Browns, but still the Browns managed to win this football game. Just a couple big plays in big moments from Jameis Winston was all they needed. And, some magic in the fourth quarter, some turnovers going back and forth. They came out on top. So either way, if, you're upset about the draft position because, they're going to need a new quarterback, they're still, tied with for second to last with only 3 wins. But it's good that instills some hope in the locker room, some confidence, especially beating a divisional opponent. Right, this team and all the AFC North teams seem to play relatively competitively within the division. There's never really like a team that wipes the entire division, and there's never a team that loses to the entire division. So I suppose if they were to win a couple upsets, it would be in a game like this one against the Steelers. But yeah, good for the Browns. Um, Happy Jameis Winston's having a good time out there. Now moving on to my next team, my number 25 team, the New Orleans Saints, who have climbed 4 spots. Now, this is more about other teams dropping below them. But Derek Carr is back, and even without Olave and Shaheed, he's hitting deep balls, right? He's hitting these deep passes to Marquez Valdez-Scantling for touchdowns just like he was earlier in the year. I mean, I guess that's more than the Browns, the Titans, and all the other teams I've listed already can hang their hats on. And, their defense isn't too bad. I mean, they did beat the Browns, so that's one reason for having them ahead of the Browns and all the rest of these teams. But, I just think Derek Carr probably out of all the teams we've listed so far who have healthy quarterbacks, I would say he's the best one right now because, T-Law is not. He's just not there right now. Moving on to my next team, another NFC South team. And that is going to be the Carolina Panthers, who climbed 3 spots to number 24. I was on to something. I was on to something when I said that they look a lot better. Because you see the way that they played against this Kansas City Chiefs defense. I mean, I know the Chiefs have really allowed opponents to hang around this year. But, man, what a performance against Steve Spagnuolo and the Super Bowl caliber defense by Bryce Young, someone who everyone had given up on by week 2 of this season. Not even like 20 games into this guy's career, and everyone was giving up on him, right? So I love to see Bryce Young officially landing on the not a bust list. Moving forward, obviously things are subject to change, but right now the way he looks, it looks like it was the Panthers and it wasn't Bryce Young. Let's just say that. The defense is still terrible, but if they keep losing these, so close, man, we almost had them type of games, they can maintain their draft capital, but also have the morale high going into next year. And that's going to be a common theme for a lot of these teams in the Scrappy, has a pulse and top 3 pick tier, is that, theoretically your priority is to lose at this point, right? This season's over, and you're going to get a better player with a better draft pick, right? But you can't just do what the Giants are doing right now and just lay down and die. You have to at least try because these are professionals out there. Some of these guys are veterans in the last years of their deal with the team. So you can't just give up, right? Or else it just looks bad and no one wants to stay. Nobody wants to join your team. Nobody wants to get drafted. Moving on to my next team, and we are also moving up into the Scrappy tier. So we moved on from has a pulse to Scrappy. And who is the bottom team in the Scrappy tier? Well, for me, it's got to be the New York Jets, who have fallen 2 spots from 21 to 23. Oh, man. Coming back to this team every single time, I just think about my Super Bowl pick for them in the preseason. And I don't regret it. I really don't. I really believe that there was something there, but they just haven't put it together this year. I mean, they had a bye. But before that, they lost to the Colts. Very unfortunate. They can't even beat a team that they're certainly better than and has even more dysfunction than they do at the quarterback position. And just as a team as a whole, not too much to say about them. I just feel like it's more the same with the Jets every week. But hey, I guess they do technically still have a pulse and a chance to make the playoffs, but they got to compete with some of these other sub 500 AFC teams. It's just not going to happen, right? It was fun. I'm a big Aaron Rodgers guy. I really am. So I was pushing for him this year, but you got to accept that this season's just over. And I'm pretty sure he's going to be like stepping away. So if he were to step away, I'll just add this as context. If Aaron Rodgers is not the starting quarterback of this team, I believe that they probably would drop into the very bottom of has a pulse tier, if not the top 3 pick tier. Because, at that point, I would say the team is just completely shell-shocked by this season as a whole. Moving on to my next team, number 22, the Chicago Bears, who have not moved. This team just loses in the most unfortunate ways. I mean, they're just on the wrong end of each game that has happened, especially the past few weeks. It's really unfortunate. They got a lot of potential, of course, number one overall pick, Caleb Williams, compared to Patrick Mahomes and all that. You got Romo Dunze, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen as your third option, Cole Kmet, and DeAndre Swift. Yeah, I know the offensive line's not great. I know their offensive coordinator isn't good, but who do you blame this week, right? Because Matt Eberflus has had this defense playing well all year, but what happened this week? I understand the Vikings have a great coaching staff, but how are you letting up, what was it, 30 points to Sam Darnold after playing the way you have this year so far? And in a week where Caleb Williams in the offense actually showed up, scoring 27 points and taking this Vikings team to overtime. A team that, spoiler alert, I have in my, I'll just say, playoff contenders tier, and they're pretty far up there. So I don't know how you. This Bears team is better than this number 22 ranking, but there's a difference between what your objective like ceiling and floor kind of equates to your rank as a team and what you actually result in, right? What do you consistently do? Do you consistently perform towards your ceiling, or do you consistently perform towards your floor? And this Bears team is consistently performing towards their floor. And when that's the case, you usually look at the coaching, the ownership, or the management. So something's got to change over there in Chicago. I don't know what it is, but you know, Eberflus's job and coordinator might be at risk. Moving on to my next team, rising 2 spots, flip-flopping with the Jets because they beat them, the Indianapolis Colts. As I said, they rose 2 spots. They were 5-7. I guess they're still alive. AR's been looking better. I'm a big AR guy. I love his potential and his upside, and I think he's a great guy, so I'm rooting for him. But even though he's looking better, they got a lot of young pieces. They're just not there yet, right? And you saw it against the Lions. I mean, just completely outclassed. But like I said, Richardson was playing better. It's just, just barely missing it here, just barely missing it there on a couple passes. But they were never going to beat the Lions anyway. So maybe they can get things going next year. They do still have a pulse for this year. I just find it really unlikely that they're going to get their footing in time to compete for this AFC that is so competitive. Moving on, we have my biggest baller. A lot of you are probably waiting for this. Some of you have been commenting about this take of mine. And for this team, it's number 20, the San Francisco 49ers, and I have them dropping 15 spots. Why? Why would I have them all the way up at number 5 and drop them all the way down to number 20? Well, the answer is simple. Injuries. This team has struggled with injuries early on in the year, and then they started to get a little bit healthy, right? McCaffrey's back, okay. But now Brock Purdy might have a torn labrum. Could mean he's out for the year on his throwing shoulder too. So even if he does come back next year, who knows what he's going to look like, right? If he has instability, who knows what's going to happen. Trent Williams, that he has the Andrew Thomas effect on the 49ers. Whenever he's out there on the field, their offensive line plays well, plays consistently, plays more as a unit. They can use him in a lot of different ways. But he's been out, or he was out. And then they also were missing Nick Bosa. So your most important player in the trenches on offense, your most important player in the trenches on defense, and your quarterback, yeah, that's a recipe for the disaster. And a playoff team like the Packers, yeah, they ran the ball all over this 49ers team. So depending on how the injuries pan out, their season's effectively over, or they're still in the race, right? Because they're only a game behind every other team in their division. And if they can get healthy and they can slip into the playoffs by winning the division just barely at 10-7 or 9-8, then I still think they have a solid chance at competing. But I don't think they're going to be in that conference championship discussion as of now, right? Like I said, if they get healthy, it's a totally different story. But right now, they're not healthy, and it doesn't really look like they're going to be healthy for the rest of this year. So, yeah, my biggest follower, the 49ers. Very unfortunate for them. Moving on to my next team. Number 19, another big faller from the NFC West, the Rams. Man, I have a lot of faith in Stafford, McVay, and what those two are able to do with their weapons, Kupp, Puka, and Kyron. But and their defensive line, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse have been playing really, really well this year. So their pass rush is pretty good. But outside of that, those like that collection of players, they just don't have the support throughout the rest of the roster to truly be competitive with some of these other playoff hopeful teams that you see higher up on the list. If you don't have a functioning offensive line, you can't protect your best asset, which is Stafford, which is what McVay channels himself through. Of course, Stafford knows what he's doing and uses Puka and Cup in a bit of that mind meld way. But if he doesn't have time to throw, it doesn't matter, right? And you can have a great pass rush, but look at the Giants. The Giants have had one of the best pass rushes since the early 2000s, or at least that's what the pace was. But you know what? Their defense sucks. You know why? Because they can't stop the run and they can't cover for long enough and they can't tackle on the back end. So the Rams just don't have a full enough roster, a deep and spread out enough roster to compete with these other teams. So that's unfortunate for them. I do like the Rams, but it's looking like this season might be a little too far out of reach for them. Moving on to my next team and to our next tier, the playoff hopefuls. And yes, there's a little bit of a mistake. So I got to talk about this team first, the Miami Dolphins, who have risen one spot to number 18, and they're now 5-6. Welcome back, Tua. Really, truly welcome back. A lot of people were saying, man, he really shouldn't play. A lot of people were concerned about his safety, but you know what? It's his decision, and he's back out there, and he's remained healthy so far. So I'm really, really glad for Tua, and I'm glad for the Dolphins and the Dolphins fans. The offense looks great with him back. Shout out to them and Achan and Jonnu Smith for my underdog teams, for my fantasy football teams. I love to see that. But let's stay on track here. This offense didn't really miss a beat. I feel like Tyreek Hill's been a little quiet, but maybe he's getting a lot of attention. But this defense has been solid too, right? The Patriots have been, not a great offense, right? But they've caught some teams off guard, and this Dolphins team was unfazed. They took care of business, and they got the win, and they're one win away from being 500, 6-6, with a fair shot at earning the 7 seed in the AFC playoffs. But I think there's one problem standing in their way, and that's my next team, the Cincinnati Bengals, who are my number 17 team. And yes, at 4-7, the Cincinnati Bengals are my number 17 team. They might be the best 4-7 team I have ever seen in my life. I mean, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, they are the best wide receiver quarterback combination this year, and it's not even close. But it's just so much wasted potential. I mean, I hate to just pin it all on the defense because obviously the offenses have their inconsistent moments, but if they even had a half decent defense, they'd be at least 500, right? All they would have had to do is win 1 or 2 more games, and they would be right there where the Dolphins are, or right there where other teams in that record range are. There's actually not that many. Maybe like the Colts, right? But you understand what I'm saying. This Bengals team has got a lot of potential. They're still breathing barely. Can they win out? Maybe. They got the Steelers twice, and I believe they got like some combination of the Titans, the Browns, and like 2 other winnable games. So they definitely can win out, but beating Pittsburgh twice would be really, really tough. Um, Even at 9-8, maybe they can potentially squeak in. But I personally have a little more faith as the weather gets colder that this Bengals team is going to get things done rather than this Dolphins team. You look at the Bengals and what they've been able to do throughout the playoffs in those cold weather games, and you look at what the Dolphins have done, and it's just night and day. The Bengals are only 1 game behind the Dolphins. I like both of these teams, and they both might miss the playoffs anyway. It's more than likely, but that's my reason for having the Bengals ahead of the Dolphins and having them both in the playoff hopefuls tier. Now moving on to my next team. My number 16 team. Call me a hater, but I have the Washington Commanders here, and they're dropping 5 spots. I know they're 7-5, but this team has now lost 3 in a row, and they're a Hail Mary away from being 1-4 in their last 5 weeks. I mean, I just think the lack of talent, especially on defense, is getting to them. And just overall as a team, I just think Cliff Kingsbury, we've seen this before, right? With the Cardinals and Kyler Murray, they started off so hot. They were like 8-1 or something before they played the Packers and finally lost, and D-Hop got injured. And it just are you watching the Commanders right now? And feel like you're seeing the same team you saw earlier in the year. I don't feel that way. I feel like this looks like a different team. I feel like the offense looks much worse. It looks much more out of sync. It looks like they don't have answers besides completing miracle passes to Terry McLaurin. I mean, I'm just not all that convinced, and maybe I'll end up being wrong. But right now, I just kind of view the Commanders as an average team that should make the playoffs. But I feel like they could. I don't feel like they could beat the Super Bowl contenders, and I certainly don't think they would lose to any of the top three pick teams. But anyone between the playoff contenders tier and has a pulse tier, I would say they have potential to win or lose against all those teams. So there you go. They're at 16. They're average. Like I said, call me a hater, but I think they deserve to drop 5 spots. Losing 3 in a row is not a good look. And then moving on to my next team, we got the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 5-6. They've climbed 3 spots, as I said, to number 15. Now, this is a little bit more about teams like the Bengals and the Commanders, the Rams and the 49ers falling. They are still a 5-6 football team. But they do have Evans back, and it looks like their run game is working with their 3 running backs. So I think they can compete for the division. They're only 1 game behind the Falcons, right? And we know the Saints and the Panthers are not going to be competing. This Bucs team has lost both their games to the Falcons, but that means that the Falcons are less than 500 against other teams, right? The Falcons are 4-5 against non-Buccaneers teams, and the Buccaneers are 5-4 against non-Falcons teams. So as they play the rest of their schedules for the rest of the year, there is actually a good chance to me that the Buccaneers end up winning this division. Now, the Falcons do have the lead. They did beat the Buccaneers twice, so I'm not really sure. You're kind of splitting hairs, but just kind of the feeling I got right now is that I think this Buccaneers team has the potential to surpass the Falcons. I'm just not going to project it yet. I want to see them not play the Giants and look that good, and then I will consider moving them past the Falcons. Who are my next team, who have also risen 3 spots for many of the same reasons I explained for the Buccaneers with all the falling teams. Don't be fooled by this team. Their pass rush is the worst in the NFL. They have so much talent on this offense. It just still feels pretty incomplete. As I said, this Falcons team, they lit up the Buccaneers both times they played them. Now, they didn't blow them out, but their offense played very, very well. In all the other games, this offense has not looked like that, right? There was maybe 1 or 2 games where the offense has looked that good, and I would say it was probably against the Panthers. So this Falcons team, yeah, they're in the playoff hopefuls tier, but it's almost entirely dependent on the record. I mean, even looking back at it now, I'm not sure if I feel the Falcons are better than the Buccaneers, the Commanders, the Dolphins, or the Bengals, but it's just the records, right? And I'm pretty low on the Commanders right now. We don't know that much about them, so I'm keeping them down there. I feel like I gotta have some respect for the Falcons because they have won these games, but I don't know. I just don't feel that great about them. They're in my playoff hopefuls tier though, so putting some respect on their name. But next is a team I love talking about, but they've fallen 1 spot to the playoff hopefuls tier, and they're my best playoff hopefuls tier, and that is the Arizona Cardinals, who are now 6-5, landing at number 13 on my list. I feel like this team looks so amazing some weeks, and then some weeks, like this most recent week, they just look so bad. They can't play well for like more than 3 weeks, is what their problem is. I mean, I guarantee you, if you look at their schedule, even it happened early on in the year, right? They blew out the Rams, they were looking good, and then they played the Commanders, and they got mopped. So if this keeps happening, even if they do make the playoffs, I doubt they're going to go on some kind of run because I just don't think they can consistently put it together, and that's probably because they're too matchup dependent, right? Their offensive line looked terrible against the Seahawks defense, and I don't know. I really like what the potential is here, but maybe it's more of a thing for next year. But they've still come a long way from what they looked like early in the year. I mean, the defense is certainly much improved. Maybe it's just the offense now that's got to get it figured out, but still got a lot of hope. I still believe in the upside of the Cardinals. They just got to put it together more consistently and for more than like 2 or 3 weeks in a row. Moving on to my next team and my playoff contenders tier. This is a tier where we got teams who I expect to go to the playoffs and maybe win a game or two, right? Not just slip in and lose in the first round to. So coming up next, we've got our playoff contenders tier. And something unfortunate happened as I started recording the second half of the video. My software decided to crash. So I'm going to do my best to give you guys, once again, a more thorough explanation for each team, but I want to get this done. So let's get right back into it. Starting with number 11, one of my most improved teams over the past 2 weeks, the Denver Broncos, +8. This is another team that has really impressed me. I mean, I think we've known over the past couple years that this defense has got some players on it, right? It's got some dudes, it's got some culture, and they've been able to get it done there. But the big question was obviously the rookie quarterback. Sean Payton, is he still a good coach? After what we saw of Russell Wilson, no one really knew who to blame. Well, it looks like he is still a good coach because he's got rookie Bo Nix. I know he's like 24 years old, but he's got rookie Bo Nix playing really, really well so far, right? Putting up 2, 3 touchdown passing games, just multiple touchdown games week after week after week. And it's not like they've got a bona fide number one wide receiver or running back or some elite offensive line either. So they're really getting it done, and they have really impressed me so far this year. I did move them into the playoff contenders tier. They're 7-5. It's a good record, but there are 7-5 teams in the playoff hopefuls tier. Looking at you, Washington Commanders. I think they're better than the Commanders, but I'm not sure if they're better than the rest of these playoff contenders tiers teams. I just want to see more, right? I want to see them beat some of these other playoff contenders convincingly because I'm just not quite sure that they would beat all the teams that are listed ahead of them. Moving on to my next team, another much improved team, and that is the Seattle Seahawks, who have risen 5 spots to my number 11 spot in my power rankings. Now, this team, they've gotten healthy, and their defensive head coach has made the most of them getting healthy. They went off against the Cardinals and single-handedly pretty much won them this game. They made the Cardinals' offensive line look absolutely terrible, but you know what? Give their offense some credit too. JSN, Geno Smith. Just when I was thinking about writing off Geno Smith, he continued not to write back. I mean, every time I seem to doubt this man, whether it's in one game or the rest of the season, right? I'm like, the Geno Smith fiasco is finally over. No, like he's here to stay. Like he is a good quarterback. So I'm really excited to see what happens in the NFC West. Whether it is the Seahawks or the Cardinals, it's a great story, but I'm not 100% convinced that either team has the ceiling, right? Offensive, defensive, and coaching and experience and all those important things for the playoffs. Just not totally convinced yet that they're going to be able to beat the teams that are ahead of them. I think there even could be another sort of tier gap after the next team and the teams that follow when it comes to playoff contenders. But it's a tier list. I got 6 tiers, so I spread it out just about as accurately as I could. Still a good look for the Seahawks getting a win against a divisional opponent. Now they hold first place in their division. Moving on to the next team, we got the Chargers, who have also risen 5 spots, just keeping their position ahead of the Seahawks. But they're now landing in my 10th spot, right? So they would be the 5 seed in the AFC. I believe they're 7-4, not 7-5. Yeah, they are 7-4. Sorry for the typo. But this team, very similarly to the Broncos, has had a lot of new. They've had a lot of change going into this year. Jim Harbaugh, obviously, changing the culture to more running the ball, more defense, more physicality, and it's been working, right? They have been running the ball. They've been sticking true to their identity. Their defense has played pretty well so far this year. But you know what? I think, as I stated in the last Power Rankings video, it was a little overstated statistically how good this defense was. The Ravens still able to expose them. So I do still think this team has some work to do. But I think in maybe next year, as soon as next year, we could see this team become like the Steelers, where just every year they're above 500, except they've got a quarterback, right? They've got a franchise quarterback. I know Russell Wilson's finally there, but for years, the Steelers were good and they didn't have a quarterback. I feel like you could see the same thing with this Chargers team. They've got the culture already established on offense and defense. They just need the players, right? If they had better players on defense, I think they could have held the Ravens and possibly beaten them. But you got the team you got, right? And you got to make the changes going into the following season and hope that you stay healthy enough to actually benefit from those changes. But either way, I got the Chargers at 10. I'm putting respect on their name. I'm calling them playoff contenders, but they got to keep their foot on the gas, and so do the Broncos, because those Dolphins and those Bengals they're hungry for that last that 7 seed. And if they end up losing enough games and finishing 9-8, then they risk the potential of missing out on the playoffs. So I hope that they continue on the trajectory they're on for their own sake. Not totally convinced of their ceiling yet, but their floor, one of the best in the NFL. Moving on to my next team, we have the Houston Texans, who have not moved after a really disappointing loss to the Titans. They got healthy, right? So Nico Collins is back, and their offense does look better. But what I do have a question: what happened to Joe Mixon this week? I mean, he's been one of the most consistent and explosive running backs in the league this year, having like 100 rushing yards and a touchdown every week. But this week, I get the Titans' defense is pretty good. They've played well so far this year, but I didn't think they'd hold Joe Mixon to, what was it, like 26 yards, like 1.6 yards per carry? Absolutely ridiculous. What happened with him this week? This Texans offensive line is just, it's letting down the run game now. It's letting down C.J. Stroud. I guess it just wasn't their day. But you can't, and it's not just the offensive line, it's the defense. Why are they so inconsistent? You got Derek Stingley, you got Will Anderson, you got Danielle Hunter. I get there's a ton of other positions on defense, but they're all playing hard for D'Amico Ryans. We saw it last year too. So, like I said, I just don't think it was their day. You just lose games sometimes that you shouldn't lose, and you just got to accept it and move on to the next week. But it just brings up sort of like an opposite situation as the Chargers, where I'm just a little concerned about the floor of this team. I'm concerned about the Chargers' ceiling. I don't really have any confidence that they would beat any of the teams that are listed ahead of them, but I don't think they'd lose to many of the teams that are below them. Maybe the Seahawks and the Broncos, but the Cardinals even, you could question, but I would say the Falcons, Buccaneers, Commanders, Dolphins, Bengals, it gets a little bit closer because they're sort of special cases. But all the teams below them, I don't think they would lose to. So a lot of concerns about the Texans floor, but their ceiling, right? If they can get hot, they can get coached up, then maybe they could sneak their way back into that Super Bowl contenders here. But I just don't see it now with the offensive line and the inconsistency on the defense. But still my number 9 team. So good for them. Moving on to my next team is a team that blew out the Texans early on in the season, and that's the Minnesota Vikings, +2. I do feel like they're cooling off a little bit over the past couple weeks, but they've still been winning all year. They're 9-2, and I like I said, I think they're cooling off. I think Darnold's running out of gas a little bit, but not in this game. I mean, the Bears' defense is it's been a good defense all year, and the Vikings put up 30 in overtime. So obviously this Vikings offense is still competent, right? It's still working, and this team has a really strong identity, right? You got the Brian Flores defense, confusing offenses, forcing turnovers, and then you got this sort of Shanahan style scheme, run the outside zone and the play action off of it, and you get your way down the field and you control the clock, and then you capitalize and you score off of turnovers, or you chew up clock and you kick a field goal. And that's just disciplined football, and that's why they've won so many games this year. So definitely like a top 5 coaching staff in the NFL, but I'm just a little concerned about what Sam Darnold's going to be able to do in the playoffs, even with that record. I guess we just got to see more of the Vikings before I potentially move them back up into the Super Bowl contenders tier. But right now, I think they're in the perfect spot, 8th best team in the NFL. Now, the team I have ahead of them, they've actually beaten, and that's the Green Bay Packers. And a lot of these teams in the playoff contenders tier who have any sort of rise, if it's 1 or 2, don't pay too much attention to it, because the 49ers did drop 15 spots. So a lot of the teams that have moved up by just 1 or 2 really aren't moving up that much. But the Packers do move up to 7, which makes them, in my power rankings, the 3rd best team in the NFC. This team, they really just took care of business against the 49ers. They're coming off the bye. The 49ers didn't have Purdy, Trent Williams, or Nick Bosa. So the Packers should have won this game. But you know what would have been concerning if they didn't destroy them, and they destroyed them. And they did it on the ground, which is crucial. Jordan Love has still been kind of turnover prone this season, a little bit crazy with the ball. He's really inaccurate as much great plays as he makes. But when you have a run game that you can lean on, that's a great compliment to having a quarterback like that, because then he can just take deep shots, right? Just kind of like some of the other guys. I'm actually going to talk about the next team and that sort of style of play, but it's a really, really good formula. You got a defense that forces turnovers and is disruptive and occasionally has really, really good games. But then you've got either a run game to maintain the lead or a passing game that can be explosive and get yards really fast, because I believe they are top 5 in yards per game. And a lot of that is because of the passing game. I mean, Jordan Love in one half of football can score 4 touchdowns, and I wouldn't be surprised. That's just the type of quarterback he is, and that's why I hold them in such high regard, because it only takes one good half for them to beat literally any team in the league, right? So I am still very high on the Packers. Still got a lot of hope for them. I still really like Jordan Love, but just got to see a little bit more if I'm going to put them in that Super Bowl contenders tier like I had them listed as. And I didn't have them listed there, but I picked them to go to the Super Bowl. Total projection, right? I'm assuming that they're going to hit their stride like they did last year. But we're not there yet, so I got to respect it. Put them here at 7. Moving on to my next team. Number 6 and the best playoff contenders team is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Essentially staying in the same spot. Like I said, the 49ers have moved everybody up. But this team is playoff bound, and I really can't wait. I mean, Russell Wilson, I said it last time, the identity of this team is clear. It is just like the Legion of Boom days in Seattle. You've got a hard-nosed defense, right? That's hard to pass against. Instead of having the elite secondary, they got the elite pass rush. But they do have some guys in the secondary, and they have great run defense. But then on offense, I think the Steelers' offense might even be a little bit better. Now, they don't have Marshawn Lynch, but the offensive line is probably better than that Seahawks offensive line. You got the same Russell Wilson. He's not in his prime, right? But he might even be smarter, more experienced. And then I would say they definitely have better receivers than the Seahawks did. I mean, the Seahawks were working with Jermaine Kearse, Doug Baldwin, like a rookie Tyler Lockett. Steelers got George Pickens. They got Mike Williams, who is an absolute beast. And when you're focused so much on Pickens, Mike Williams is going to get some one-on-one looks, and that's all he needs. And then you got 2 jump ball guys, and then you got a burner in Calvin Austin, right? Who's been making more and more plays. Someone the Steelers drafted, it was a few years ago, and I was really excited about, but then he just never really got going. But now, with Russell Wilson, a deep ball passer, he's been getting going. So good for Calvin Austin. And then obviously they've got the tight ends. They got Pat Fryermuth, and then Darnell Washington, who's an athletic beast and great in the run game. So this team's got a strong identity, and then they got the running backs too. So there's nothing. And then, what's the last thing I always talk about? Coaching. They certainly got the coaching. Now I wouldn't say that Tomlin is top 5. He's gonna outcoach someone in the Super Bowl but when it comes to regular season consistency, getting past the divisional round, I would definitely put Tomlin up there with some of the best. So I'm not going to put them in the Super Bowl contenders tier. They did just lose to the Browns, so there is some concern about, I guess, if it snows or if it rains, can this team play clean enough to win these games? I don't know. I had them in the Super Bowl contenders tier, and then I just had to take them out. So they're still my number 6 team, and I'm really excited to see what they're going to do moving forward. But from my man who keeps commenting, the Steelers are going to go to the Super Bowl. I want to see it, man. I really do. But they got a tough road with the AFC, and they're going to have to play their best football that they've played in many years if they're going to do that. So good luck to them. Moving on to my next team, and the first team in my Super Bowl contenders tier, we got the Philadelphia Eagles. And I got a lot to say. And I got a lot of feelings about this team. I got to admit it, right? Vic Fangio and this defense, there's no holes. I really don't see a single hole. Maybe one of their safety spots. I mean, let's go through it. We got Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slay on the outside. You got Reed Blankenship, and I don't remember who their other safety is. It's not coming to me right now. But then you move to the linebackers and the nickel. You got Zach Bond, who's been an absolute beast this year. You got Nakobe Dean, more of a coverage guy, right? And he's been pretty good. And then you got Cooper DeJean in the slot, making all sorts of plays. And then you move to the defensive line. Obviously, it sucks to have the Brendan Graham injury, but you do have Nolan Smith, a young, talented player. You got Bryce Huff, who you just added. And then you got Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis. So the talent on this defense is clear. And then you got an experienced coach like Vic Fangio, got him playing like this. This defense, I mean, I want to see more. Against some of these more elite teams. They play the Ravens this week, so we're gonna find out pretty much everything we need to know about the Eagles after this week. If they can slow down the Ravens, then I am truly convinced that this defense is 1,000,000% legit and not to be taken lightly. And then you move on to the offense. I mean, we know they got like a top 3 offensive line. They got AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. And then they got a whole collection of dudes at wide receiver 3, whether it's Dotson, Johnny Wilson, whoever that guy was who went off in when AJ Brown and Devontae Smith were injured. Sorry, man. I can't remember your name. Somebody will put it in the comments. But they got, like I said, many options for wide receiver 3, and then you got Jalen Hurts, a quarterback, who say what you will about him being a turnover machine. Yeah, he definitely has his moments, but it seems to me like when the team around him, when everyone is doing their job as well as they are, Jalen doesn't make those mistakes, right? It's when they're losing or they're trying to come back that those mistakes come out and happen, which is why I have concerns deeper in the playoffs. But as of right now, they certainly are a Super Bowl contender. And why is the last reason? Well, when you got a guy like Jalen Hurts who struggles when you're trying to come back or the game is close, you know what really, really helps? Having a guy like Saquon Barkley, who can basically become the leader of your offense, right? Because whether it's making the third downs closer, right? Because, we know Hurts is great at, hitting A.J. Brown deep, and he's pretty good with his legs and, hitting those easy passes. But on third down, people get concerned. He doesn't have great pocket presence. But when you just have a guy like Saquon, every third down is closer. And every time that you're down by a touchdown, he gives you a chance to just get an instant touchdown by breaking away one of those touchdown runs on one of the well-blocked plays. Oh, my God. Giants, why can't we block holes like the Eagles can? Because you see what Saquon Barkley can do, and it's just incredible. Age Cliff, get out of here. Get out of here with that Age Cliff stuff. You see what he's doing? Some guys are just built different. You got to just recognize that. Now, maybe the Giants weren't in a position. I got to stop. Stay on track. Stay with the Eagles. But yes, Saquon is raising the floor of this entire offense and this entire team, right? He's single-handedly, I'm not going to say won them like 2 or 3 games, but he definitely won them that Saints game. And he's definitely kept them in many games this year with the touchdown runs he's been having. So he might be having that Christian McCaffrey effect that he had on the 49ers, right? Where the offense just can't do anything wrong, right? And then the defense is playing this well. Well, looks like a Super Bowl caliber roster. So you guys are asking me, why are they at 5? Well, look at the 4 teams ahead of them and tell me how you would rank those coaches. Because yes, they might even have the most talented team besides maybe the Lions or the Ravens. But you just look at the coaching, right? And the Eagles they've played very, very well over the past couple of weeks. But like I said, they're going to play the Ravens this week, and this could completely change everything. This could be the peak of where we see the Eagles and how we perceive them, or this could be just the beginning, right? And they could start entering that top 3 tier. We don't know. But I hope this is as high as I have to put them. But in the case that it isn't, it will probably be because they ended up winning or losing by 1 or 2 points to the Ravens. But yes, my lack of faith in them does come from Nick Sirianni. We've seen it before. We saw it in the Super Bowl. We saw it last year. The collapse. Just doesn't seem like he clicks with the team. When everything's going well like this, it's not a problem. But maybe him shaving his head helped. You never know. Moving on to my next team. Spent a lot of time in the Eagles. Let's move forward. Let's move on. I'm talking about the Chiefs, who have dropped 1 spot. Yeah, they lost to the Bills, but they're still 10-1. For a good portion of the season, I don't like the Chiefs personally. I don't hate them, right? But I'm sick of seeing them get to every single AFC Championship game. I want to see some change and some differences. But I was thinking they were like kind of frauds, right? They were winning all these games by like 1 score, not very convincing, never covering the spread or anything, always just not quite meeting the expectations we had for them. And it makes you wonder, like, well, are they kind of frauds, right? Because if they're not blowing teams out like the Lions are, or the Bills or the Ravens. Like, why are they here, and how are they still 10-1? Well, when you have top two, top three coaching staff, and you have the best quarterback in the league, and you got an elite defense, you can hang around in any game. And then you just give Mahomes the ball with a chance to score with 2 minutes left, and then you just end up winning the game, just like they did against the Panthers. I mean, the Panthers defense is terrible, but we've seen this time and time again this year. Either the Chiefs defense shuts the door, or Patrick Mahomes does what he needs to do to get the win. And this is just the way that they are. Say what you will about the penalties and all that stuff. There's so many other plays in a game that could help decide it. And I'm not going to sit here and say the Chiefs are 10-1 because of penalties, because they've won back-to-back Super Bowls. All right, this is what they are. They're gonna probably win pretty much every game they play. It might be close, but you know what? It almost seems like they're saving themselves for the playoffs. Like they're not exerting themselves, and we saw this last year. Everyone should be afraid. I'm telling you, this team isn't going anywhere. I don't care if they lost to the Bills. But I did move them below the Bills just to give the Bills their respect. And let's move on to the Bills. My number 3 team, they've jumped one spot, switching with the Chiefs as they beat them in the regular season once again. What a great day to be a Bills fan. I mean, usually they're on the other end of that spectrum, right? Mahomes has the ball. Either they're winning by like 3 or 4 points, or it's tied. Mahomes goes down, scores, and chews up too much clock and ends the game. But how great for the Bills to be winning, right? But not by more than a touchdown. For it to be 4th down in enemy territory, and for them not to fold and not to kick a field goal or anything soft like that and say, you know what? No, we have a great quarterback too, and we can shut the door with that quarterback. And what did they do? They gave him the ball, and he barreled his way into the end zone for a touchdown. That's what, man, I got hyped for that. I love to see that because I love Josh Allen. I think he's a great player, and I really think he's a good guy too. And I like the Bills. You know, I got no reason to hate them. And I think it's like their turn more than anyone else's to beat the Chiefs. If not, then it's the Ravens. But what a great moment for them, right? All the change this offseason, losing Diggs, losing all the defensive players. A lot of people were saying McDermott was on the hot seat, and maybe he deserved to be. But you know what? They figured it out once again. And it's not just Josh Allen. It's the team that are running the ball well. The play calling's good. The defense is doing just enough, right? They're playing cohesive football. And when you have Josh Allen, you have a cohesive football team around him, you're going to be a top 3 team. Top 5 at least, right? Like at least a Super Bowl contender. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but right now, I hope they stay here for a good while. Good for the Bills. Glad you guys beat the Chiefs. Moving on to my next team, we got the Baltimore Ravens, who have not moved since my Week 11 power rankings. More of the same from them, right? Scary offense with Lamar and Derrick Henry. I mean, we've talked about it week after week. Just how scary this duo is. This might be the best quarterback running back duo, right? Running that read option I've ever seen, like ever. Derrick Henry is a Hall of Famer. Lamar Jackson is gonna be a Hall of Famer one day. This offensive line isn't elite. It's not. It's got a whole bunch of new pieces. Maybe the cohesiveness is there, but they're not elite talent wise. At tight end, they're not elite, right? Mark Andrews is starting to play better, but he got into a car accident before the season. He didn't even look like the same guy. Now they do have Likely and Charlie Kolar, so they have like an elite tight end room, elite cohesiveness. And Zay Flowers is a good player. He's a good wide receiver, but he's not like a number 1 separator guy. He's like a guy who get the ball in space or like a deep threat. He's just a good athlete, right? I'm not saying he can't run routes, but I'm saying probably like guys like even Deontay Johnson, better route runners than Zay, just not quite as athletic. And then Rashad Bateman's your 2, and who even is their wide receiver 3? Is it Aguilar? I don't even know. But it doesn't matter because you have Derrick Henry, you got Lamar Jackson, and this defense is starting to play a little bit better, right? It was looking like it was going to be another bad week from them. Oh, no, are they going to let the Chargers beat them? No. They finally locked in second and third quarter and did enough to get a nice, comfortable lead. And sure, they let him back in a little bit in the fourth. But in the end of the day, this Ravens team is just as scary as it's always been. And if Lamar and Derrick Henry are both on the field in every game in the playoffs, I mean, you saw what they did to the Bills, right? I mean, I know they lost to the Chiefs, but that was week 1, right? All these changes that they made to the offensive line, They looked so bad in that game. Now they looked bad last year against the Chiefs. They did. I'd say almost they looked a little better this year. But I think if they played them in the playoffs this year, just the way things look right now, I think the Ravens would win right now. It might be a little different once Mahomes gets his like playoff boost and the defense and the coaching starts turning it on and everything like that. It might just be a little different. But yeah, this Ravens team, they're legit, and they might have the highest ceiling of any team, even the next team that's above them. And I'll explain why as I talk about them. Moving on to the number one team, we got the Detroit Lions. They haven't budged. They're still the best team in the NFL. They can't do anything wrong, right? They lose Aiden Hutchinson. Well, they add Darius Smith. They got the depth guys stepping up. Their defense is still playing really, really well. The Super Bowl is theirs to lose. I mean, you see week after week after week, they just absolutely dominate teams. And it's like they don't take a week off. They're not doing what the Chiefs are doing. I'm pretty convinced that the Chiefs throttle, right? They're not trying as hard as they could be to win every single game because they don't have to. But this Lions team is going out there every week. And you know what? It's hardening them. It's keeping them ready. And I feel like they're improving because of it, right? If you don't go 100%, you know you're gonna win a play, right? Or you're going to score. You're not going to get as good, right? Because so you give all that effort and you make a tiny little mistake, you can adjust it. If you're not giving that effort, that mistake, you're not even going to notice it, right? And you can't change it. This Lions team really can't do anything wrong. So why am I saying the Ravens might have a higher ceiling than them? Well, we saw this matchup last year, just last year. I get the Ravens defense was, much better. I would say the Ravens offense wasn't quite as good, but I would say this Lions team was pretty much the same Lions team. And what happened in that game? Well, the Lions tried to stop the run, and they tried to sell out to do so, and they simply could not. Right, so they let up big passing plays. They couldn't stop the run, and they couldn't do anything on defense. And then offensively, they were getting shut down, right? Because that Ravens defense is so elite. So what do I think would happen this year? Well, I think it would be a shootout. I do. I think there would be some clock getting chewed, right? Because both teams would be running the ball. But at the end of the day, I think they would score pretty much on every drive that there isn't a turnover or it would be like one or two punts. But I just think the ceiling that you get when you have a guy like Lamar, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes at quarterback is it's just different, right? Because there are wrinkles built into your playbook and into your scheme, and then there are wrinkles that your quarterback adds. Now, I would say, theoretically, either Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson are the highest ceiling quarterbacks. I'm not saying they're the best. Patrick Mahomes is the best by far. He can do everything, and he can do it all the most consistently. But Josh Allen is pretty much Cam Newton with a stronger arm and better passing ability. So you cannot stop him. He's a freight train. You can't stop him from running. You can't cover some of the throws he can make. You just can't. And then Lamar is just so fast that he's like impossible to sack, which means it's hard to force turnover worthy plays. And we've seen how he's got 3 picks this year. They were all ripped away from his receivers' hands. He's having like maybe one of the best seasons I've ever seen from a quarterback. I mean, it's kind of quiet because of how much praise Derrick Henry's getting, but he's got 30 touchdowns and 3 picks that basically aren't his fault. I don't know how much he's fumbled. I don't know that off the top of my head, but you guys understand where I'm going with this. You're just not getting that from Jared Goff. I won't forget last year seeing them in that championship game against the 49ers when they had an opportunity. I think it was like they were in the red zone and they had a chance to score and either tie it up or take the lead. And the 49ers, they sent like 5 and they got some pressure. Maybe it was 4, but they didn't send that many, but they were getting pressure. Jared Goff is flushed out the pocket and just watching him move outside the pocket and trying to make a pass, extending the play. He just doesn't have that. And Lamar, Allen, Mahomes, they have it. So although I think the Lions are the best team, they still better watch out for these other 3 behind them. And then the Eagles, yeah, you guys can stick around. You guys can hang out up here. It's okay. But thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to try to get you guys out another video tomorrow. That's going to be my Thanksgiving predictions, my money line predictions, and my Giants specific predictions. If you guys enjoyed the video, please leave a like to support the channel. Leave your thoughts in the comments. If you disagree with anything I said. Who should be number one if not the Lions, right? Should it be the Ravens, Bills, or Chiefs? And if you aren't subscribed already, you missed your chance to be one of the first 100, but you can be the next 200, 250, or 500. We keep moving the goalposts to the next milestone. But until next time, until tomorrow, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.